other side. Thank you for being here. I am going to tell you my story. And because I am not a half in kind of person, um, I am not gonna try and summarize it into one video. I'm gonna go on and on and on and on and on. Maybe I will do it in parts. So this is my story, part one. Why am I? This is my story, part one. Let me take you back. Let me take you way, way back. So one of the things that I know about myself is that I remember my memory goes back to 4 years old. That's as far back as I can remember. And one of the core memories from that age, I think I have three very vivid memories. Four very vivid memories I have of me at that age. One, I remember stealing sugar. I remember we were at home, a kitchen, it was full, the whole family was there, and I think I was 3 or 4. I'm not really sure, but I was following my mother around crying, holding on her skirt as she was moving around the kitchen, busy doing indozomakot, and I was there crying, following her around. And I remember my dad shouting at me, "Hey, hlala phansi, ngxolo." I have that thing in my head. I remember it, right? And I think I remember it because it's the moment in my life where I became scared of my father because he was a strict parent, right? The third memory is I remember when my uncle, I don't know if he burled the chair, but I remember a painter is stool. So we had this very long chair back home when I was a kid. When we were growing up, it was red, and I remember the day that my uncle painted it red, and we were there outside as the kids, simbukele, simncokolisa, just chatting with him as he was painting the chair. Yeah, I also remember there's a day where me and a whole bunch of my cousins went where we were not supposed to go as kids, like saya sayobuta, and my grandmother was upset. When we got back home, my grandmother made us stand in a line and she beat us one by one. Sasizulile, I don't know how to say that in English. Sazula sayobuta. And when we came back, my grandmother was like, "Nivelapi. Nonke nivelapi. Niyahamba niyahubisana." Hit us. We were in a line. I remember we were in a line, and one by one she hit us. So anyway, so my childhood. Let me just take you back to my childhood. So I am the firstborn daughter to my mother. I'm also my father's firstborn daughter, but I'm my father's. I am my mother's firstborn child and daughter, and I'm my father's firstborn daughter. Right? So in my growing up, first my formative years, I think from when I was a baby to about 4 years old, I was living at home, at my father's home, KwaMakhulu, Emvenyane, in a village called Emvenyane, Ematatela, in the Eastern Cape. So in our family, it was my grandmother. My grandfather was also around, but my grandfather lived at his second wife's house. So he would come to my grandmother's house during the day and go back to the second wife's house in the evenings. So it was my grandparents. They had 5 children, my grandmother, and my grandfather. It was my dad's older brother, my dad's sister, and my dad's 2 younger brothers, all living at home. And my dad's wife, who is my mother, and all of my dad's siblings, their children were there. I and my siblings were there. So we were about 2021 at all, Ekaya, at that age, from when I remember. So it was a typical black household childhood where, we drink, we have breakfast, We the kids go out to play because we're still kids. Here and there you are being sent to go do things by the adults. Sometimes we go fetch water. I used to go to the woods to go get firewood with my grandmother sometimes, or with my mom, or with the other girls in the village. Ukuteza. And in my family I was basically like the only girl in the children, the grandchildren of my grandmother. I was basically the only girl. My father's older brother had one daughter who lived with her mother. My father had me and my two brothers. My aunt had two boys at the time when we were still young. My uncle had kids, but they were not living with us, and they were also all boys. And then my other uncle had daughters, but the relationship with his wife didn't work out, so they lived somewhere else. So I was basically the only girl in that home of 21 people. I was the only girl child. And so, like I said, we would do normal things like wake up, have breakfast, have lunch, go play, go fetch wood, go fetch water. The atmosphere was, I don't know how I can describe it. It was a big family. There's just so many things that I noted as a child. The fact that my mother was always working, she was always the one cooking, washing the dishes, she was always doing laundry, she was always busy. That I noticed that my dad was strict. I learned that I was not allowed to go to other people's homes and visit friends and all of that. I was supposed to be in the yard and all of those kinds of things. The atmosphere was okay. It was okay. Yeah, it was okay. Obviously, there was a lot of corporal punishment. There was a lot of strictness. So if there were things done that were wrong, get better. And a lot of the times we would be hit in front of each other. So if let's say I do something wrong, I'll be hit in front, like where there's everybody can see, and that was one of the things that really damaged me as a child. So also, if my brother did something wrong, or if my cousin did something wrong, get better. And it was part of our normal life in Toyoba. When you do something wrong, you get hit, right? So from that was my life until 4 years old. So when I was 4 years old, my parents took me to a boarding school in KZN. It was called Zanini Preschool. It was a boarding school in KZN where I went there from the ages of 4, I think, and then when I was 6, when I was 7, I went to grade 1. So it was 4, 5, 6, 3 years in that boarding school. So obviously, I don't know how my parents came to the decision of taking a child to boarding school, but that was it. So we would go to school and then we'd go back to the village during school holidays. And I tell you guys, in those 3 years, ndandingumZulu. Bengikhuluma. Me and my two brothers, there was 3 of us there. Besikhuluma, besivunula. Sijaiva isiZulu. When we went home for the holidays, we would dance for my grandmother, showing her the Zulu dance moves. We were Zulu kids. You know, it was a really nice experience when you think about it, because I never got bullied there. I was far away from home, far away from my parents. I never got bullied. I never got molested. I was never hurt in any way in that boarding school. It was such a wholesome experience, you know. There were Indians, we're so Indians. And it was like, wow, it was such a big thing at that age to see Indians, because you grew up in a village where everyone's black, right? And you're exposed to someone of a different ethnicity, and it's like, wow, right? And so in boarding school, yeah, that was life. My parents would come every other month to bring us like snacks and goodies and all of that. One traumatic thing that happened to me in that boarding school, which I remember to this day, is that in the year 1999, there was talk of the world is ending next year. Umhlaba uyaphela. I don't know how I got to know about this, but I found out that in 2000, on the 31st of December 1999, the world is ending, and I was terrified. I was terrified. So I remember on the 31st of December in 1999, I went to sleep. I was at a boarding school. I don't know why I was there at that time of the year. It's so weird. But I was at boarding school. I remember I went to sleep that night thinking that this is it. It's over. and then I'm going to hell. So I was in that thing of, oh my gosh, the world is ending and I am going to hell. When I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to wake up in hell. My shock when I woke up the next day and it was the year 2000 and they were playing Channel O on the TV at school. Yeah, so that's one of the traumatic things that ever happened to me in that age and in that school, was that I thought the world was ending and I was so scared for my life. And I was sure I'm going to hell. So anyway, graduated from the preschool. I went to live with my mother in Bizana. Bizana is a small town also in the Eastern Cape. That's where my mother was working. So me and two of my brothers, three of us, were living with my mother at Bizana for grade 1, for my grade 1 and my grade 2. So I went there when I was 7 and 8. So we're living with my mother, and life with my mother was very cushioned in a sense. It was really annoying back then, but my mother was fussy. We were not allowed to go anywhere without her. Nowhere we go are we going without our mother. If she was not around, she would lock us in the house and tell us, you will pee in the bucket, you will poop in the bucket, everything I'll sort it out when I come back. We didn't have a TV. Our TV was black and white, and the shows during the day, the shows during the, like, it was the most annoying and boring thing ever. Life with my mother was like that basically. So we were not allowed to go back home without her. She would take us to school. I don't remember how. I think we walked with the other kids to school, but to come back after school we had to wait for her. So that was the life that I lived with my mom, and she used to make us I don't know what you call it in English, basically cleanse us every Saturday. So she would make us drink salt water, and she would say she's cleansing us because we've been eating nonsense and junk food all week, right? So that was life with my mom. It was very guarded, it was very shielded. And this is around the time when I noticed that my parents were, I don't know, but I noticed that there was something off about them at around the ages of 6 and 7. I noticed that they don't behave like other parents. They don't touch each other, they don't hold each other, they don't say I love you to each other, they don't hug. All of those things were a factor, that were things that I noticed and things that I wished to see from them, but I never saw them, right? So I had that awareness at around 6, 7. And then when I was 8, yes, when I was 8 years old, we moved again to go to live Emmanuel. Emmanuel is a township in Matatiele in the Eastern Cape. So there, it was me, my 2 brothers, my dad, and 2 of my cousins. And in all of this, I'm the girl. I'm the only girl in the house. And there we had a helper. There was a helper in the house always. There was always somebody in the house who was helping with the cleaning, laundry, making us food, and all of that. So life Emaluti, when I got there, Emaluti is a township with Sotho and Xhosa people, and Hlubi basically people. So I had to learn Sesotho, and it was like one of the most fascinating experiences because I basically learned it from scratch, from conversation, from listening to people, and I had to subscribe to learning Sesotho. And I also moved from a school that taught us Afrikaans to a school that taught me English and isiXhosa. So when I was living with my mom, I was learning English and Afrikaans. And then when I went to live with my dad, I was learning English and isiXhosa. So it was a bit of an adjustment learning to do onobumba, bakulu, to EN3, from EN3 346 to onobumba bakulu and all of those things. It was a bit of an adjustment for me. But the school that I went to when I went to live with my dad was a principal at that school. It was a bit of a perk, but not really, because my dad was a very strict parent. So having him as a principal of the school was not as nice as people thought it was. My life at home was not as cute and as beautiful as people thought it was, because my dad was an authoritarian. My dad was strict. Okay. So life there, it was cool, it was okay. I was growing, preteen, growing. I made friends. I grew up around my brothers and their friends. A lot of things happened, and it wasn't a lot of like, I wouldn't say traumatic things in a sense, but I remember that's where I had my first crush when I was there. Oh, to this day I hate having a crush, because that crush that I had in my loot, yo, that crush was intense. So I grew up, like I said, with my brothers and my cousins and my dad, and there was a lot of males around me. And I remember at that time, one of the most prominent things at that time for me was that I did not, I quickly realized that I did not have emotional safety, in that I couldn't be weak emotionally. I couldn't just cry if I wanted to cry. I couldn't be just like a girl, because I was around boys and it was all rough and tumble, and I acclimated to that kind of life. Even though I had friends that were girls, even though I had little inclinations to be a girl, but it was kind of like always subdued, right? Because I was around boys and my mother was not there. So my mother would come on the weekends and during school holidays as well. So that is also, so I was there from grade 4 to grade 9. So that I was there grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, 6 years in total. And it was one of the most richest experiences, or the richest ages of my life, because I made a lot of friends, I made a lot of relationships. I lived, man, as a kid. There was not anything major that was bad, except for the fact that I felt the fact that I'm living with boys and I'm not really free to be a girl. And there's a lot of things I was not allowed to do because my dad was strict. I couldn't go visit friends. I couldn't just gallivant in town and do things. At a point, my brothers were allowed to, but I was not. All of that. And it was very damaging for me to be in a place where my brothers can do things that I can't do, and no one can tell me why, and all of that. So around 14, then I started dating. And yo. So, so I started dating at 14, right? But at 13, one of the things that I really didn't like at 13 was boys, because I was always around boys at home, and I was like, yo, baya dika, I'm not going. I just didn't like boys, because I know this show. I know this show. I live with this, man. What is going on? Hey, buena. So anyway, at 13, I remember at 13, my brothers had a friend, and he was at our house one day, and I'm coming back from school, and this guy is looking at me. He was around our age, so it was not like anything creepy or pedophilic or whatever. But he's looking at me, this boy, and I'm like, why? What are you looking at? I was so annoyed. I'm like, why are you looking at me? And the way he was looking at me, it was, now that I'm grown, it was lustful. Now that I'm grown and I know, I can understand. And he was looking at me with this desire and this. And I was like, stop looking at me. I was that rude girl, because I was living with boys, and I did, the way I spoke with boys was like, I was like, what? Why the hell are you looking at me? And eventually I was like, no, I like you. I want you to be my girlfriend and all of that. And I was like, it was inconsequential, I guess, at that point. So I was like, okay. And then the next day I go to school, after I was like, I agreed to be his girlfriend and all of that. 13 years old. I'm like, okay, I'll be your girlfriend. It doesn't really, it's not a big deal at that age for me being someone's girlfriend. A lot of people I know are dating already. Some of my friends are already dating. It isn't something that's like, ooh. It's like, okay, people date. People my age date. Just don't make sure your parents don't know. But anyway, the next day, the day after I agreed to be this boy's boyfriend, I'm chatting with some of my friends, and this girl's like, oh, he's my boyfriend. And I'm like, no ways. So I went to him that same day. I'm like, well, now you think you're clever. Whatever contract we had, cancel it. Whatever thing that was happening, whatever little thing that was starting to form, cancel. Cancel. Yeah, when I can, that was. So that's why I don't consider that guy my first boyfriend, because it was literally less than 24 hours. There was no hug, no kiss, nothing. Yeah, bona. And that guy was a soccer player and he was nasty with the girls. So I'm glad I never dated him anyway. But anyway, the following year, I'm 14. And what's very crazy is that I'm 14. While I agreed to be this guy's boyfriend, the other one, I have a massive crush on another guy who's my friend's cousin. Hey, I see this guy, I lose myself. And the following year, another guy approaches me. The guy that would become my first real boyfriend approaches me on December of my 13th year. And I'm like, ew, no, because he was one of the guys that was always sitting at the back in class, making noise, causing trouble. He was one of the bad boys. And I was like, no. And I was like, how dare you come to me and ask me to be your girlfriend? Do you see yourself? I was like, Mna, we're in different social circles. You are the troublemaker. I'm the good girl. Ne? Following year, we go back to school. It's January, and this guy, he comes and he looks different. Polished, clean, smelling nice, looks like he shaved. He's glowing, man. And I'm like, hey, bro, what happened? What happened to this nigger? He was such an annoyance last year, and now he looks different. He looks nice. And it's like, oh, he went to the mountain the previous year, December, just before, after he had asked me and I rejected him that December, he went to the mountain. So he was now a man. And he was still pursuing me. And I was like, okay, dated him. And that time, in that age, at that environment, all of that, I loved him. He was going to be my husband. I was convinced that this guy is going to be my husband. Okay, so I dated this guy. Mind you, my dad is a principal at this school. All of the teachers know me. Most of the students in this school know me, and they know that my dad is the principal. So what are the odds of my dad finding out about Nadia Jola? How long does it take for my dad to find out? Not long. I thought I could hide it, but it wasn't long. It was not long, right? So one of the common things about, I will continue the story about my first boyfriend and the progression from there. But let me tell you this one thing for now, that in that age, the whole time, like I was living in Maluti for those 6 years, I did not like to be at home because home was cold. Home was not warm. I didn't like to be at home. So I was always doing something at school to keep me busy, to keep me entertained, to keep me from going home early, from being at home. So anything that took me away from home that was school related, I did it. Anything that I was in sports, so sports, you would go to tournaments and all those things and you'd be away or so. Like instead of coming back home at 2, you get home at 5 because it was a sports day. So I didn't want to be at home because, like I said, I had noticed that the relationship between my parents was a bit sour, and I couldn't understand why, and I wished to see them lovey-dovey and touchy-feely, but I never saw that, and I could never understand why. Like, I knew for a fact that they did not love each other. No one told me. I saw it, I felt it. And so I didn't want to be at home because also I was the only girl. I was not allowed to do anything. Once I come back from school, that's it. I don't have a phone. I'm not allowed to have a phone, so I can't stay in touch with my friends. We don't really have a TV. We have these old TVs. As not yes TV. So I never liked going home, and that is a time in my life where I sort of started having these little tiny feelings of depression. This dark feeling started developing at that time because like home was just so draining. It was just so heavy and all of that. So that is my life up until so at this point I'm 14. I have said yes to a guy. I have a boyfriend, and my dad is about to find out, and it is about to go down. It is about to go down. So we'll get into that in the next video. Thank you guys for tuning in this one. I will continue to share my story and try to make it. I don't know what I'm gonna try to make it, but I'm just gonna tell you about my life over the years. And yeah, we'll pick it up from here on the next video. Thank you for watching this video. Goodbye for now. I'll see you in the next video.